Alright, so let's deep dive into the first step, defining the business challenge. Let's start with a quick recap. So obviously data is at the heart of any data analysis project. However, that's why many make the mistake of starting here. It's too easy to be misled or overwhelmed by the available data today. Again, think of the matrix code stream I showed you before. That's pretty much what you're trying to do when you start with the data. So what we do instead is we start with a clear, defined business problem or question that will cut down the type of data you have to look at and the potential analysis techniques very fast. With less options here, you will easily avoid the overwhelm. And again, of course, data is often the key to understanding a problem. However, being able to define a problem is often more than 50% of a solution. So how do you come up with well-defined business challenges in good key questions? Of course, we also have a framework here. The goal is to come up with crisp and specific key questions. And we'll talk about what that means in a second. However, first, we have to define a marketing or business challenge. The challenge is just the general situation the company currently is in and the complications to that situation that are coming up. So that could be industry trends, customer behavior trends, new competitors moving in, or just the general internal performance. Often you'll know these kind of things, but sometimes it can also be part of a brief or request you're getting from somebody else. Let's have a look at an example to make this more tangible. So this is Orange Co., a company which sells organic oranges online in a subscription model. I'll give you a couple of seconds to read through the text. So quite obvious, the challenges Orange Co. is facing are first, their customer lifetime value is dropping, or the average customer lifetime value is dropping. Second, the profitability on their marketing efforts is dropping, and they're also losing share of voice. So what they probably want to know is how can they increase the average customer lifetime value, or how can they find out which customers to focus on? And second, how can they improve their marketing efforts performance? Often people will confuse these kind of challenges with the actual key questions. However, good and well-defined key questions should meet the following criteria. They should be specific, so very simple and significant. They should be measurable, so quantifiable. They should be action-oriented, so if we answer those key questions, can we actually act on this? They should be relevant, so if we answer the key questions, will there be a so what for our initial marketing challenge? And last, they should be time bound, so they should be targeting a specific time period. So out of my experience, those are definitely good guidelines. However, as it is with all theoretical concepts, it can be sometimes very difficult to apply those in real life. And I'll show you a second what that means. So before we have a look at some good questions, let's have a look at some bad questions first to make it more clear. These are some bad questions as they don't meet the criteria at all. So for example, the first one, can marketing be optimized to increase profitability? It's just too general. It's not specific at all. The second one, should Orange Co. improve its worsening share of voice situation? Of course it should, so it's not disputable at all. And the third one, Orange Co. is suffering from poor advertising profitability despite being an industry leader. That's not even a question, so it's just a statement of fact. Let's have a look at some good key questions instead. And let's start with this first one, which is pretty much a prototype of a good, smart question, as it meets all the criteria. It's specific, as we don't ask about how to improve their online marketing in general. It's definitely measurable, as we're asking about the 5% decrease. It's actionable, as the answer will have some implications. It's relevant, as the answer will give us something to act upon on how to improve our profitability, which was our initial marketing challenge, and it's time bound as we're only looking at year-over-year figures. However, as I said before, this is a question from an ideal world. And in real life, you will often have questions which don't meet all the criteria, but which are still valid and good. So let's have a look at some of those examples. As such, number 2 is missing a measurable metric. We are just asking why it dropped in general and not by how much. However, I would argue though, it is still a valid question as it fulfills all the other criteria and the answer to it is definitely actionable. Question number 3 is a classic forecasting question. It's often hard to quantify those, as it often doesn't make sense to put a specific number into the question. For example, why would you ask, will revenue grow by more than 5% if you could just ask, how will it develop? Also, it might not be as relevant per se, as you wouldn't know how to act on the answer or what to do exactly. However, I would say this is still a valid question, as its answers can lead us to some more follow-up questions which can be more relevant or actionable. As you just saw, it's not all black and white. So try to stick to the criteria, but don't try to force it. In order to easily base business decisions on the questions in the end, the most important ones are that your questions are specific. Nothing worse than that question, could you give me some generic insights on our current revenue development, for example? That the questions are action-oriented, so decisions can actually be implemented afterwards, and that they're relevant to the initial challenge. Quantification and time can often be neglected or just derived from the general business context.